Is Christianity too narrow? So most people know that Jesus said in John 14:6, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. People think that's got to be one of the most arrogant and exclusive statements in all of history. I'm the only way. In our culture, one of the bad raps Christianity gets is people think, well, Christians are just arrogant and judgmental because they believe that their way is the only way. Funny thing about that is, everybody in our culture knows that Jesus claimed to be the only way, that Christianity has a claim of exclusivity to it. What they don't necessarily know is that every religion has that behind it. Islam claims to be the only way, Buddhism claims to be the only way, Hinduism claims to be the only way. Everybody thinks their way is right and is insulted when someone says there's another way or another way along with your way. I was a swimmer in college, and one of my big mistakes was in the national championships, I got to lead off our 400 freestyle relay, and I was so amped about swimming fast in this race that I forgot on the start to tip my head down, so that as I went into the water, my goggles took on water, and instead of staying on my eyes, came down around my mouth. For the next 100 yards, every time I breathed, my goggles are down here, and they dumped water into my lungs. I had great intentions, I had a great strategy, but my methodology was all off because even though I was sincere about swimming fast, I had executed the thing wrongly. And the truth is, if you explore world religions, they all have different paths, but none of them leads to the same place. And in the next couple videos, we'll actually cover those for you. But if you look at Islam, for instance, Muhammad claimed that there were 5 pillars that you must follow, and if you did so, you'd get to paradise, which is different than heaven. Our Hindu friends claim reincarnation is the way that by repetitive lives on earth, usually most Hindu scholars believe hundreds of thousands of lives, by living well and progressively better, you'll jump off the planet and eventually get to be united with the universe and enfolded into the nothingness of nirvana, and that for them is heaven. Our Buddhist friends think that you have to believe the fourfold truths and follow the eightfold paths, and animists think different things. Every religion has not just a different belief system, they have a different path to a different eternity, which tells us that they can't all be right. They can all be wrong, but only one can be right. You can have 2 truths occupying the same space. So looking at Christianity, people say, well, Christianity's too narrow. Shouldn't there be more options and more ways? Well, I have a lot of members of my church who are younger, and so we have babies all the time, and sometimes those children are born with jaundice. Well, when a child's born with jaundice, their parents freak out because they're all yellow in color and they worry that they're going to die, and it really is a pretty serious thing. But when the doctor comes in and mom says, what do I do about my baby's jaundice? The doctor says it's a really simple solution. We'll put him under a lamp for the next 24 or 48 hours, and he'll absorb enough vitamin C and he'll pink up and everything will be okay. Since the solution is so simple, they don't say, well, can't there be more than one option? They just choose the solution because it really does make sense and it really cures their baby. And that's the claims of Christianity. It's a simple solution, and it makes up for all the problems of how we work our way to heaven, because the truth is, Christianity teaches we don't work our way to heaven. We trust God to do the work. Where all religions have something to do, and therefore they're spelled D-O, Christianity is about something God has done, and therefore it's spelled D-O-N-E. Let me just read you a portion of a book I wrote a couple years ago called The God Questions. I asked the question, is God uncaring because He only gives one option? Well, consider this. Suppose that once upon a time, a good and loving God created people in His own image. Suppose He gave those people free will so that they could make their own choices. Suppose He set us up in an idyllic environment with plenty of food and sunshine and interesting things to do. Suppose He imposed one restriction on us, warning us that if we violate that restriction, we would lose the gift of life that He has given us. Suppose His creation violated that restriction for no good reason, just because they felt like it. Suppose that instead of taking their lives, God made provision for them and forgave them. Suppose that despite God's provision, these descendants repeatedly practice a pattern of disobedience and rebellion over and over and over again. Suppose that God bestowed special gifts on one particular nation so that they could know Him deeply and help break this destructive pattern for all nations. Suppose this chosen nation rebelled too. Suppose that after time after time after time, God forgave this nation, delivered them from their current debacle, and sent special messengers to communicate with them. But suppose these people killed those messengers, turning their backs on God, inventing other religions, and instead of worshiping God, worshiped stone idols and animals and mountains and rivers and streams. Suppose, in an ultimate act of redemption, God Himself came to them in human form as the Son of God, not to condemn them, but to redeem them. Instead of welcoming Him, suppose the people rejected Him, tortured Him, and killed Him. Suppose that suppose that God accepted the death of His Son as payment for the sins of the very people who put Him to death. Suppose that God offered His Son's murderers complete forgiveness, transcendent peace, and eternal life as a free gift. Suppose God said, I only demand one thing from you in return, that you honor my Son who gave His life for you. If God did that, would you still say, God, you aren't being fair, you haven't done enough, I want another option? The wonder is not, why is there only one way, but why is there any way at all? The God of the universe has been so gracious that in spite of ourselves, He offers us the way, the truth, and the life. It is a simple way, but it is the eternal cure for all that ails us. It's the way to be restored to the relationship that God wanted from the beginning, and the way to participate in the eternal heaven and paradise that God created for us at the beginning of the world.